I want to talk to you about the sentencing for plea bargains that were offered to these monsters. They didn't want to go to court. They didn't want to go to trial. And they took plea deals, 22 years flat. Robert Brooks was brutally murdered on December 9th, 2024, inside Marcy Correctional Facility. Nicholas Anzalone and Anthony Farina were two of the main beatdown squad personnel. These were not correction officers on the night of December 9th. These monsters have been doing this for a long time, and I guarantee you that there's many other victims and many other people who were beaten either to death or beaten into submission, beaten to the point where they're in wheelchairs, beaten to the point where they have lifelong issues. These monsters stood there and watched and actually laughed. They weren't prison guards. They weren't correction officers. They were criminals. Look, I'm going to make this short and sweet. We saw this through from beginning to end, and I promised you guys that we would cover this. I have a good friend of mine, conservative felon, who's a former incarcerated individual, a great man. He is got a YouTube channel. He knows the ins and outs of the prison system. And he said, hey, if you want me to jump on, I'll jump on with you. So I wanted just to introduce to you conservative felon Joe. Thank you so much for being here.
How you doing, Ron?
Just says Test under your name. So we'll just call you Test for tonight.
Nice.
Your thoughts on the sentencing? We know it was a plea deal that these guys that got sentenced. Christopher Walrath to 15 years, Clinton Correctional, he's up there. He's an APPU. That's where all the former law enforcement, judges, high-profile people go. They're in protective custody. That's what's going to happen with these scumbags too, right?
Yeah, they're probably, I mean, I'm speculating, but there's a few facilities that have special units for former law enforcement. They're definitely not going to be in the general population. That's not even debatable. They wouldn't survive 24 hours in the general population. Somebody would take them out. Just for the fact that they were correctional officers, for the fact that they killed a prisoner. What I wanted to really point out, Robert Brooks was not allowed to make an impact statement, and the reason that is so significant is when you are eligible for parole, the parole board takes into consideration an impact statement, and that impact statement is now non-existent. And so in the eyes of the parole board, they will say that the family did not make a statement, which makes them more willing to release the defendants because they don't have a family speaking up in their own words. So an impact statement is very important, very important. And the fact that
I just want to stop you just for a second there because I want to interject. I believe that on the record, it was read by the district attorney. We saw the gentleman in the suit get up there. I don't know his name, but well-spoken. Yeah. He read a statement by Robert Brooks Jr.
I pray your loved ones never have to endure the kind of pain I experienced. All of this could have been avoided if you and your fellow officers just did your job.
This is the district attorney's office reading the statement from Robert Brooks Jr. That's Robert Brooks Sr.'s son. Read. He wanted to read the statements, and the defense argued that they didn't want them to read the statements. So that statement is on record for the parole.
That's good. That's good.
It's I get what you're saying. It's much more of a high impact if you see the actual family member come up there and deliver a emotional, heartfelt impact statement in open court. These court officers did not look like they were friends with these guys. And anyone that's good, and I have to say this, I'm saying this open here with you and with all of our community, any good police officer does not like a bad one. If you're good, you truly don't like someone who tarnishes the shield. And these are correction officers. They're not police officers responding to calls on the street. They're there to keep order inside in those walls for the inmate population. They're there to make sure everything runs orderly and to keep people safe. And they failed to do that. These guys turned into murderers on the night of December 9th, 2024, when they crossed that line and beat Robert Brooks Sr. to death. This was not their first rodeo. Joe, your thoughts?
You know, several of them were under investigation already prior to the Robert Brooks killing from Letitia James, the Attorney General. So
Correct.
several of these officers already had open investigations for assaulting other prisoners. So we definitely know it's not their first rodeo. What you also notice is that none of them gave an apology in court. None of them expressed their sorrow. None of them expressed their regret. I mean, from a legal standpoint, that's a wise decision, because I'm sure all of them are going to appeal their sentence. They're going to try to file appeals. And if they openly admit their sorrow in the courtroom, that can hurt them on their appeal. So I'm sure the attorneys told them to keep their mouths shut and not apologize for anything, because when you apologize, that's an admittance of guilt. So I think that's why they didn't apologize. Either that, or they're just so callous they had nothing to say.
They made a statement through their attorneys of remorse, but when he asked each of these criminals, convicted criminals being sentenced, these murderers, he asked each individual that came up to that podium and got their sentence if they had anything that they wanted to address to the court.
Most involved in the deadly beating of Marcy inmate Robert Brooks will spend 22 years in prison.
2 others sentenced today, spending less than 10 years in prison. These terms agreed to by the defendants when they admitted guilt.
2 of the men, Anthony Farina and Nicholas Anzalone, pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter. They will spend 22 years behind bars. Mashaw and Walters took plea deals on second-degree manslaughter charges, earning each of them up to nearly a decade behind bars.
Defendants did not seem to be remorseful, as they were all led away in handcuffs. All 4 were given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, but each of them declined.
I've never seen so many lives destroyed in a moment.
Brooks' son and brother were in attendance in court today, with their statements read aloud by defense prior to sentencing. Brooks' son wanted to share his heartfelt words personally, but was denied.
I was just mortified when I heard the district attorney, Fitzpatrick, say that the defense argued back and forth that they didn't want the family to deliver their impact statement. What is that? What kind of kangaroo court is this? The judge should have said, "Oh, hell no. Where's my oh, hell no button?"
Oh, hell no.
That's what the judge should have said, and said, no, they're going to get up and they're going to deliver their speech. But that's not what happened here.
He's presided over the case all year, but the judge hasn't shown much emotion until now.
I've been at this a long time and I've seen a lot of terrible things in this room. I've never seen so many lives destroyed in a moment.
The judge calling out Sergeant Matthew Mayshaw.
But notice, as you stood there, saw this on your shoulder and the American flag on the other shoulder. You were there for us, you were the purpose, the person who had the authority, whose job it was. The reason you were there was to make sure something like this didn't happen. You were in the best position to say stop, and you didn't.
You know, the fact these guys, knowing that these guys are going into that APPU, it's just, we've had corrections executives on the show, guys that are doing the job the right way. They have told us that, look, they have to make that 30-day kind of settling in period where they do the interviews for psychic evaluations, risk assessments of incoming inmates. So it's done for everybody who enters the prison system. And you know this, right? You went through it.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll go through that. They are exceptions. They are exceptions to the rule, Ron, meaning they're not going to go through the normal process that a normal citizen will go through. What I mean is, like, when I was getting sentenced, I would get transferred to Downstate Correctional Facility. I would go through all that testing, the psychological testing, where they check your education. All that provides a classification. That makes the Department of Corrections determine what facility you're going to go to, what programs you're in need of, and it's just the intake process. And they're not going to go through the same intake process just because of who they are, and because they are correctional officers, they will probably bypass the reception facility and go straight to the facility, Clinton, Dannemora, APPU. And that's done for their protection. Steps have to be taken for their protection, according to the Department of Corrections. And I do understand that, because you can't. If you put them in the population, they're not going to make it. If you send them to a reception jail, they're not going to make it. Somebody is going to take them out. And so, yeah, they're going to bypass a lot of the process. And I will tell you that they will be treated differently from the correctional officers.
As a New York City police officer, I was in positions like this where I had my guy who fought us, someone who resisted arrest and fought us like a battle where we had to call for backup. And once I get the guy in cuffs, all bets are off. I'm not continuing. Yeah. And I've had to, on a few different occasions, more than a few, say to people, hey, this is my prisoner. Stop with the kicking and it's over. It's a wrap. You guys can just back out and go. And I was subject to a little bit of ridicule, like, oh, you're soft or whatever. No, I'm responsible for this guy because I put over the radio that this guy is my arrest. So if you guys beat him to death, I'm going to be responsible for it. So
2 ways that correctional officers can view the men that they are supervising. They can view them as the lowest people on the face of earth. They view them as criminals. They view them as a waste of life. They view them as animals, right? That's one view that a correctional officer possesses. And then there's another view, to look at the prisoners as people who need help, people who are lost in life, people who need to honestly be rehabilitated, and people that maybe I can help, right? And so you're going to look at the prisoner one or two ways. You're going to look at the prisoner as a human being that you can try and make a difference in his life, or you're going to look at the prisoner as someone that you would enjoy beating to death. And there was no real reason ever given on why they beat Robert Brooks to death.